From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy launches an impeachment inquiry into President Biden as a federal judge in New Mexico approves a restraining order on the governor's emergency public health gun prohibition. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Bill McGurn and editorial board member Mene Ukwe-Barua. House Republicans have spent months investigating the business affairs and influence peddling of the president's son, Hunter, but it's about to get ratcheted up a notch. Here is Kevin McCarthy this week on Wednesday, explaining to reporters what he thinks the House stands to gain by launching an impeachment inquiry into the president.
We don't have any of the credit card statements from all the credit cards from the shell companies. We don't have the president's bank statements. We don't have Hunter Biden's bank statements. Providing information like that would answer the question. All we're looking at in an impeachment inquiry is answering the question.
And the timetable, how quickly are you looking?
Well, I would think the White House would want to answer these questions rather quickly. If someone was accused of a bribe, if someone was accused where they said, I don't know if CNN asked the president the question, why did he tell the American public he's never talked to the Hunter Biden? When now we know that he had about the business partner.
And here is the response from the other side of the aisle, Senator Chuck Schumer.
I have sympathy with Speaker McCarthy. He's in a difficult position. But sometimes you got to tell these people who are way off the deep end, who have no interest in helping the American people, who just want to pursue their own witch hunts, that they can't go forward with it. So I'm disappointed. I think it's absurd. But we are not going to let it stop us here in the Senate from keeping the government open and working in a bipartisan way.
Bill, what do you make of this? And one thing to keep in mind, I think, is the distinction here. The House has not introduced articles of impeachment against Joe Biden that are going to be voted on and sent over to the Senate for a trial. We still are a long way from that, it seems to me. This is the beginning of what McCarthy says is an impeachment inquiry.
Exactly. I think it's interesting. Chuck Schumer, one, didn't answer the question. What are the answers to these issues about Joe Biden and his son's business? And two, when he used the word, he sounded like Donald Trump, a witch hunt. But he provided no evidence for that. There are a lot of issues raised by what we have learned in the past few months, and they deserve answers. I think Speaker McCarthy was right when he outlined all the things we have learned about how Joe Biden was a brand, meaning the product they were selling, the 10% for the big guy, which Tony Bobulinski confirmed was Joe Biden, the meetings with Burisma and Ukrainian and Chinese officials. We have so many questions from things we learned, and he pointed out they want to get bank records. I understand from Comer's office that they're looking for bank records now for Hunter Biden and James Biden. So I hope they can get the answers.
And Comer being James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who has been leading the charge on much of this investigation. Aside from saying that there's no evidence, Mene, one of the emerging Democratic strategies, it seems to me, is to throw Hunter Biden under the bus. Here is a quote from Jerry Nadler, the New York Democrat. Hunter Biden may have very well done some improper things. He's a disturbed man. Almost every president has had problematic family members, unquote. Here's another from Congressman Jamie Raskin. You can't impeach Hunter Biden, but he will be prosecuted, unquote. So, I mean, it's an interesting distinction here because, Mene, to my mind, we already have testimony that Joe Biden was on calls where Hunter Biden was with his business partners. He went to at least one dinner with Hunter Biden and some business partners. I do think Joe Biden is going to face some hard questions during the 2024 campaign. You said in 2020 that your son did nothing wrong and that you had no knowledge, no involvement in any of this. That seems not to be true. But the question that the House is digging into, I think, is more substantive, which is, was there some arrangement where Joe was actually involved in some of this stuff? And one of the things they can point to as raising questions is this text message from Hunter Biden to his daughter where he says, "Don't worry, unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary." And it does seem like there's a real question. What did he mean by that? Was there some arrangement whereby Hunter Biden was paying some bills for the vice president?
Right. I do think it's fascinating to see the way that Democrats have changed their tune on Hunter Biden since the 2020 election. Back then, when Hunter's dealings, both his drug use and gun possession, but also his travels overseas to solicit money, were basically brushed aside by Democrats who tried to portray it all as a Republican witch hunt, trying to tar Joe Biden by his association with his troubled son. And they basically said, there's nothing to see here. Fast forward a few years later, and we've just gotten so many more details about what Hunter was up to, particularly his dealings with financiers and oligarchs overseas, that there's no way that they can possibly say that this isn't a matter of public import. They can't discredit all of the reporting on it. They can't discredit the 19 pages worth of information that the House Oversight Committee has collected on Hunter Biden's dealings. And so they basically have to concede against their better hopes that, yes, Hunter has been up to some deeply, deeply illicit things and really is culpable potentially under the court of law. And we'll see where the special counsel investigation proceeds on that. Their only hope now is to circle the wagons around Joe Biden and suggest that he was not involved in any of these deals, even if it's become quite clear that at least he was meeting with some of these folks and was discussing Hunter Biden's overseas dealings. They're still holding up hope that there will be no smoking gun to show that Joe Biden was actually involved in the arrangements and was receiving payment. So, as Bill was mentioning, the aim of the impeachment inquiry right now is to strengthen the ability of the House Oversight Committee and other investigators in the House to actually obtain some evidence that might connect Joe to Hunter's business dealings. Nobody knows for sure yet whether that's going to emerge, but that's the mandate Republicans face right now. How can we push forward and make it so that it's not merely circumstantial evidence connecting Joe to Hunter's dealings? We want to find out if there's anything very clear showing that Joe was involved. And if so, then that's when you would really get toward potentially moving ahead with an impeachment vote.
And to dig into that a little bit, remember that the House does not have free rein to subpoena and demand anything that it wants for any reason. One of the reasons that it can send such a subpoena and have it upheld is if it is information that the House or the Senate is seeking as it drafts legislation. And so remember, this was a point of debate when Democrats were trying to get a hold of President Trump's tax returns. There were arguments about whether they had a legitimate legislative purpose to do that. And they argued that they were trying to confirm that the IRS was actually auditing the president's returns as it was supposed to be doing. And Bill, the argument that Kevin McCarthy is making is that launching an impeachment inquiry is a way to sidestep some of this, strengthen the House's hand if it sends those subpoenas for, let's say, Hunter Biden's bank records or his credit card statements, and that eventually gets taken to court, as it might well.
Yes, in court, an impeachment subpoena has a lot more power than regular oversight because, as you mentioned, an impeachment doesn't have to have a legislative purpose. It has to be related to getting at the truth. So the financial records are what they really want now, and that will certainly strengthen not just in court, where an impeachment subpoena is likely to prevail over objections, but in negotiations with justice and IRS and other agencies, not for data as well as for testimony by different officials. Remember, someone was recently convicted of defying a congressional subpoena, Peter Navarro, a Trump aide, and prosecuted for it. We'll see if that standard applies to Democrats. But I think Kevin McCarthy, in a meeting with the press, really laid out all the things that they found about Joe Biden. Remember, we have an FBI form from what the FBI maintains as a credible and trusted source saying that a Burisma exec told him that he paid $5 million each to Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in bribes. Now, we need to know, did the FBI investigate this? What did they find? Or did they just ignore it? That's a side issue. You know, it's not just whether Joe Biden profited. It's whether he was part of the sale, encouraged it, and whether his Justice Department, as president, was unduly trying to protect Hunter Biden from any prosecution. Remember, that's what the IRS agents testified to, that anytime you try to get at the truth, they fought you. And what have we seen for Joe Biden? We've seen all sorts of lies. In the debates in 2020, he flatly lied and said China gave his son no money. Well, Hunter admitted in court that it did give him money. And he cited 51 intelligence officers who produced a talking point just for that night, falsely saying the laptop was disinformation. And now what we're reading, he's set up a war room. He said this morning he was not distracted by impeachment, but the setting up of a war room to fight. And his White House counsel spokesman is saying, calling on the media to start attacking Republicans.